Philippians 4:8. This finally is the finally brothers, too, by the way. This is about the third time he said it, and it's the finally. So maybe you've heard those sermons before, haven't you? Finally, and then the preacher goes on for the next 45 minutes. You love that, don't you? Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. I'd like to frame this in a battle cry, in one of those wartime speeches. If you were a generation, I suppose, I don't know, older, a little younger than I am, your mind probably goes to something like William Wallace, half-painted face, on a horse, back and forth in front of the troops, giving some rousing cry about, let's go take the enemy. I date a little bit further back than that, to about 1960, in the real movie Spartacus. I like that, I am Spartacus. Well, older people know that. Tonight, a Roman army lands in the harbor of Brundusium. Another army is approaching from the west. Between them, they hope to trap us here against the sea. Rome will not allow us to escape from Italy. We have no choice but to march against Rome herself and end this war the only way that it could have ended, by freeing every slave in Italy. I'd rather be here, a free man among brothers, than to be the richest citizen in Rome. We've fought many battles and won great victories. Maybe there's no peace in this world. As long as we live, we must stay true to ourselves. I do know that we are brothers, and I know that we are free. We march tonight. Wow. Kirk Douglas, Spartacus. Contained in this little challenge right there and in the text is something in common. Not only do I want to characterize this in a battle cry, but Spartacus here is trying to remind them of certain things that we want to pinpoint when we get to the application. At this point in the sermon, I want to just try and do a little coaching and tell you where we're going, because I think that what carries them through, us through the battle and the warfare is the character issues that come out in this particular text. Paul is reminding the Philippians, in the midst of their challenge, in the midst of their persecution, in the midst of their whole environment, probably of a lot of veterans of the Roman army being all about them, there's a certain way that you should act. We often call this etiquette. I had to look the word etiquette up in the dictionary to see if it's really where I'm targeting. And you see it before you, the customary code of behavior, among members of a group. It's not a law. Etiquette's not a law. It's just a customary code that people in a certain group share. This is the way that things are supposed to be done. This is how we operate. I'm kind of sports-minded. Maybe we can set the context again a little bit better by using a couple of sports metaphors. I know that this will escape Keith, but some of you aren't sports people. Baseball. Let's take baseball, for instance. The etiquette of baseball. It's not really in the rules, but it's the etiquette. So say there's a line drive into right field. Okay? It's a base hit. There was somebody on second base. He's rounding third. He's coming on home. The throw is coming in to the plate. The slide is there. The dust, the cloud is going on like that. And the umpire, buddy, says, out. And the manager from the dugout says, you gotta be kidding me. Now here it is. It is actually etiquette for the manager of that dugout to leave that dugout and to run out there, kick a little dirt around, turn his cap around backwards. Maybe not. Forget the dirt in the cap. But it is actually, if that manager were to stay in the dugout after a close play like that, why, the newspapers would be all over him. The fans would wonder, is this guy doing his job? That's the way he's supposed to act. That's the etiquette, at least one of the forms of etiquette within the game of baseball. He's supposed to go out there and argue with the umpire's call. Am I right, Mr. Stewart, or not? You expect him to do that. If you don't know, Buddy Stewart's a lifetime umpire. He knows these things. Now, switch it. Take the sport that we call soccer. Most of the world calls football. Guy's dribbling down the sidelines like that with the ball, and he's kicking it around like that, and then somebody comes in. This is what they call a tackle, not like American football. They call it a tackle. He comes in, he's going to try and steal the ball, but he comes in some reckless fashion, and he doesn't hit the ball at all. He just swings his legs, catches the guy just above the ankle and the shin, throws him flying like that, and the referee runs up, and what does he do? He pulls out a card. Now, if he doesn't think it was too egregious, he'll pull out a yellow card, and he'll let everybody know that this player has been given a warning. You see, now, if it was really egregious or something subsequent happens, he could even pull out what? A red card. That means he's out of the game, right? Now, what you will never, ever see in the sport of soccer is some coach from the sideline running out into midfield, throwing his hat around, kicking dirt, screaming. Now, I'm not saying they always agree, and there is some talk going on. But you watch a good football game, you watch a good soccer game, these players know exactly just how far they can go. They can say something, but they, especially if it was that yellow card, they know if they just even slightly step over the line, that red card could come out and they're out of the game. And you don't see nearly the same thing. Now, if you switch the two things around, you're totally out of context. You're totally out of context. If the baseball manager acts like the soccer coach, he's going to lose his job pretty soon, and vice versa. Probably, if the football coach acts like he's probably going to be history after that game, just right away. You can't do that. It's the etiquette. Okay, now I've got you on the page of the etiquette. Now I want to bring you to Philippians with that kind of a thought. I want you to give you the heart of the sermon, and then let's unpack it together. So let's come back to Philippians. And this is what I see Paul saying. I see Paul saying to the Philippians, there is a character attached to the gospel. If you want to stay with what I'm saying, there's an etiquette attached to the gospel. Furthermore, if I want to press all the way to the end of the sermon, I would say to you to act contrary to the etiquette that Paul is describing, the character that Paul is describing, is to nullify the gospel. It's to make it worthless in the sense of it being a message to be proclaimed. Nobody's going to listen to you. You're so out of character, it demeans the truth that you're trying to proclaim. That's it. That's the sermon. We can all go home. Philippians 4, 8, and 9. I want to do something unusual. So we're looking at it. We're looking at verse 8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true. Here's the unusual part. I want to take the true, I want to put it at the end. Okay? It's okay. I don't think that the order here is in any particular priority except for the fact that truth is first. And so I want to say a few more things about truth than I am the others. So if we can put truth in the parking lot for just a moment, let's take a look at the other attributes that are going on. Whatever is honorable, worthy of respect, or dignified in this case. The only other time in the New Testament, and that's something to be noted, each of these attributes are incredibly rare throughout the entire New Testament. They're hardly used, and sometimes several of them are only here and no other place in the New Testament. Here, this particular word, honorable, is only used when it's describing the qualifications of a deacon. When it's describing the qualifications of a deacon, he is to be honorable. Or over in Titus, when we're talking about different groups, different people in the body helping other people in the body, like older men helping younger men, older women teaching younger women. And that course that we see in Titus, also the older men there are to be honorable. They're to be worthy of respect. Whatever is just is next. Whatever is just. This just is a legal term and probably reminds us in the environment in which we are. We're in the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome, or better said, the law of Rome, the legalis. The legal framework of the world these days is the law that comes from Rome. And so this word just is a legal term that keeps everything morally and legally, big word for me, equitable, balanced, just. What is the right thing to do? These moral, equitable, in balance. Whatever is pure, that is proven to be innocent. This is akin to, in the original language, the word hagios. Hagios is holy and also has this connotation of being pure. But in this sense, the purity that the apostle is writing the Philippians about is not a pure in a way of perfectionism. None of us qualify. How are we going to have a character of being pure in that sense? But pure in the sense of when you go to the grocery store and you're looking for the orange juice and it says, 100% orange juice, not made from concentrate, no sugar added, no other additives going. That's a good way of thinking about it. No other additives, Paul is saying, pure. No other additives that will have the effect of diminishing the character. No other additives that have the effects of diminishing the character. Whatever is pure. Whatever is pure. Lord, I don't want anything in my life that would diminish the character of who you are and your gospel in me. Whatever is pure. Whatever is lovely. Whatever is lovely. This word comes from... Many of you have heard sermons, different words for the word love, agape, phileo, eros. This comes from the middle one, phileo, where we get that word that attaches to Philadelphia, brotherly love, city of brotherly love, phileo. Whatever is lovely. Whatever, in this case, not necessarily the aesthetic, whatever is lovely. Love that idea, but I think we're talking about personal character. And so this word love for phileo is saying attractive of love, that which attracts, something that attracts. And so to be a person that attracts other people, that draws them close in a character way. I know we live in such a physical world. We're talking about, you got to be pretty in order to be. That's not what he's talking about at all. We're talking about character traits. And are you a kind of a person that people are drawn to? You want to be that kind of person, Paul says, that they might hear the gospel. Whatever is lovely. Whatever is commendable. And again, here's another word that's only used here in the New Testament. Euphema. We get the word euphemism, a good word. A good word, whatever is commendable. When you're thinking about going about, can I bring you back to the metaphor? Whether it's Spartacus, whether it's Patton, I was looking up these war speeches, whether it's William Wallace's Braveheart, but think about it. Whatever is positive, whatever is commendable, whatever there's a good word, if there's any excellence, the New Testament writer, not really a New Testament writer, he's a writer in New Testament times. His name is Philo. Philo has written more than our entire New Testament. He's a Jew who wrote during the first century, and he used this word that Paul is using in here, arte, for virtue. Because in the honor, shame world of the New Testament. Say it again, because we're going to do Hebrews coming in the turn of the new year, if the Lord wills, and we're going to see a community and a society based on an honor, shame kind of a world. In an honor and shame kind of a world, the highest thing, the highest attribute, the highest characteristic is virtue. And Philo uses this word throughout all of his writings during the New Testament times as that which is virtue. If there is any excellence, if there is any excellent virtue, if there is anything worthy of praise. Interesting what it says. The word worthy is not in the original text. It simply says, if there is any praise. If there is any praise. Look at these attributes: honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent. I think that Paul is doing that kind of, the reason I'm drawn to that metaphor is because he's given it to him. Is there anything honorable, anything just, anything commendable, anything worthy of praise, anything excellent? Can you hear him at that moment through the letter? I'm getting to the end of the letter. I'm getting to the end when I'm signing off. I'm leaving you. May never see you again. Giving you the rally. Now there is that one that I skipped over. Let's go back and pick it up. Whatever is true. In some sense, I think this may be the king of values that he's talking about. In a sense, what's a good word? What's commendable if it's not true? What's worthy of praise if it's not true? What's honorable if it's not true? Truth could be, in fact, the king of values that he's describing here. And I think that it's actually the skeleton that holds up the whole body. I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago about Francis Schaeffer and some of the things that he said back in the 70s about truth and about the fact that he sees in the coming decades the diminished idea that people have about truth, not just what they think truth is or isn't, but whether there is even a truth to be argued about. I think that he used much of the same kind of military campaign language. And Schaeffer's point was that mankind was destroying its own existence by attacking objective truth. Schaeffer said mankind is attacking their own existence by demeaning and attacking objective truth. This is what he said. Man destroyed the base which gave him the possibility of freedoms. That's why I was really drawn more towards the Spartacus thing, because he's reaching out, he's trying to rally the forces to embrace freedom for them. Again, Schaeffer, man destroyed the base which gave him the possibility of the freedoms by attacking truth. If it helps, here's a weird one. I'm just warning you. But what came to mind about this when I read this about Schaeffer was the cartoons that I used to watch as a little guy. Cartoons. Maybe Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, those kinds of things. And one character is chasing another character, and so the first character has the idea, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to climb this tree. Okay. Up the tree he goes. The next thing you know, the opposer, the guy who's chasing after him, he's up the tree. Oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh, I know what I'll do next. I'll go out onto this limb. Okay, so I'll go out on this limb. I go out on the limb. Oh, what happens next? Oh, guy sees me. He turns around. He starts coming out on a limb. Oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh, I know what I'll do. This is the fascinating part. He reaches in some pocket, someplace, I don't know where, pulls out a 4-foot saw. Where did that come from? I don't know. He's got a saw. Now I know what I'll do. This guy can't catch me. And he turns around, faces him like that, and goes, right? What's he doing? He's cutting off the limb. Oh, I'm going to be free, aren't I? All of a sudden, the limbs track through. You know. He comes to the realization that he was his own demise. That's what Schaeffer was saying. The attack on objective biblical truth is our own demise. It's our own downfall. Jeremiah tried to say these things to the children of Israel in the Old Testament. Back in Jeremiah chapter 9, this is what Jeremiah is saying. They bend their tongue like a bow. Now this is Israel. He's speaking about Israel. They bend their tongue like a bow. Falsehood and not truth has grown strong in the land. For they proceed from evil to evil, and they do not know me, declares the Lord. Let everyone beware of his neighbor, and put no trust in any brother. Do you hear what Jeremiah is saying? He's not talking about the enemy. He's saying, beware of your neighbor. Do not put trust in a brother, for every brother is a deceiver, and every neighbor goes about as a slanderer. Everyone deceives his neighbor, and no one speaks the truth. They have taught their tongue to speak lies. They weary themselves committing iniquity. Jeremiah is trying to tell these people, turn back, turn back. And he's saying at the very root of the tree is the demise of truth and the knowledge of God. Os Guinness has said this about truth. Christianity, Christian faith, is not true because it works. It works because it is true. Christianity, that is the Christian faith, is not true because it works. That's what the world is doing now. It's trying to replace truth with pragmatism. Whatever works out there, whatever gets a bigger crowd, let's do that. The Christian faith is not true because it works. It works because it is true. But what are we to do? What is a Christian to do? What is a Christian to do in a world that doesn't even see value in truth at all? They even question the reality that there is a truth. It's not just that we can't trust our politicians to tell us the truth. We can't even believe they value truth at all. When's the last time you saw a commercial that you believed? I don't mean just a public announcement, a political announcement that we're getting these days. When's the last time you saw a commercial that you actually were through? And if you were persuaded, let me just tell you that font like 3, font levels, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I print my sermon at about font 18 so I can see it. Yeah. You see those commercials down at the bottom, that font 3 that no human being could read? You know what they just, I've told you this before. You know what that says? We just lied to you. Everything we just said was a lie. But it's so small you can't read that. We live in a society that does not value truth whatsoever. Why? Why do we just shrug the shoulders? Why? It's the etiquette. It's the way the game is played. It's how you play the game. Can you imagine going to an advertising agency and saying, listen, what I want you to do is just tell people the straight up truth? You've got to be kidding me. I'll be fired tomorrow. Because it's the way that the game is played. So again, what is a Christian to do? How is he to live in the light of the truth? Well, I wanted to camp on this because I wanted to ask, well, what is true? Along with Pilate, thy word is truth, right? Sanctify them in the truth, amen. But right here in Philippians, Paul is commending. Don't forget, he's on his horse, he's marching back and forth, maybe he's standing up on a podium, and he's speaking to the troops. I think this is what he would say. I think he would say, don't forget chapter 1, verse 6, that whatever God begins, he completes. I think he thinks about chapter 1, verse 12, that hard times like being in prison actually do advance the gospel. Hard times like being in prison actually do advance the gospel. That to be departed, that is, from this life and to be with the Lord is actually better in 123. That it is a gift to suffer for the sake of Christ, 129. That every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord, in 2:9. That believers can hold fast to the word of life, 2:6. That the value of knowing Christ makes everything else look like garbage, 3:8. That I will attain to the resurrection of the dead, 3:11. That believers' citizenship is in heaven. That believers can stand firm in the faith, 4:1. That God's peace surpasses all understanding and will guard our hearts and minds, 4:7. That is the truth. That's what he's saying to the army. That's what he's saying in my final statements. Whatever is true, think about these things. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Because he knows that the corridor for right action, the pathway for right action starts right here in the brain. Don't give it up. Do not give it up. I think he switches real quickly, maybe from their context of the Roman situation to his own childhood in verse 9. I think he switches very quickly by saying, look at me. The language that he used looks very much like the Jewish education of a young boy. And so I think in true Jewish educational fashion, Paul turns and exhorts the Philippians. He says this about himself: what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things. Think these things, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. The Mishnah. Mishnah is a commentary, Jewish piece of rabbinic literature, much about the training of young men found in the Mishnah. This is what it says in the Mishnah. It describes the educational process of a young Jewish boy. At 5 years old, one is fit for the scripture. At 10 years old, the Mishnah or oral Torah. At 13. At 13, for the fulfilling of the commandments. At 15, the Talmud, making a rabbinic interpretation. And at 18, the bride chamber. At 20, pursuing a vocation. At 30, for authority. So there's a little antiquated language going on there in the Mishnah, but that's the pursuit. That's the pathway for a young boy in his education. A very few, of most outstanding Beit Midrash, or students of commentary, students sought permission to study with a famous rabbi, often leaving home to travel with him for a lengthy period of time. These students were called Talmidim. Now, it's not Talmud, but Talmidim. A little technicality, but the Talmud. Talmidim, they're students. That's what it means in Hebrew, which is translated disciple. There is much more to a Talmud than what we call a student. A student wants to know what the teacher knows for the grade, not just to complete the class. He wants to know more than the grade and completing the class or the degree. A Talmud wants to be like his teacher. That is to become what the teacher is. That meant that the student were passionately devoted to the rabbi and noted everything he did or said. That meant that the rabbi-talmid relationship was a very intense and personal system of education. As the rabbi lived and taught his understanding of the scripture, his student, the talmidim, listened and watched and imitated so as to become like him. Eventually, they would become teachers, passing on the lifestyle to other talmidim. They're watching him. They watch the way he walks. They watch the way he reads the scriptures. They watch all his mannerisms. They try and mimic him. They try and imitate him. They watch his speech patterns and try and follow the same speech patterns. This is the kind of language that Paul is using to the Philippians. And he says to the Philippians, what you have learned from me even, and received, what you've received and heard and seen in me, practice these things. Think and practice. Think and practice. How's that working with you? How you doing with thinking the right things? Fixing your mind. Paul writes over in 2 Corinthians, I don't have it as memorized as I should in chapter 10, so will work with me on that. Yeah, though we walk according to the flesh, we do not wage war according to the flesh. We do not wage war in that respect. We seek to lay hold, to take captive, you hear that military language, of every stronghold. We seek to even lay hold of that which is a lofty opinion, he says in 2 Corinthians 10, and to lay hold of it and to take it captive. That's what we Christians need to do, and we are so lax at it. We're so Casper, milquetoast, blah, jello. Everybody else is about where I am. I'm in pretty good company. So that when people get the solid milk of the word, or stronghold, it's, how come they got to be so way up here? How come they can't put the cookies on the bottom shelf more? Folks, we need to be challenged to think these things and to practice these things. A very quick, finally, couple of words of application here, would you? Would you indulge me? I was meditating in the middle of the night. Lord, where's the application here? I mean, maybe you just leave it at that. Maybe I could bring out a horse, get on a horse. Did you like that? No. I didn't do that. I said, where's the application? Where's the application? Where's the application? I mean, what is it finally that you're going to say to these people and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, go do this? Where's the application? God, like he does. This is right there in the text. It's right there in the text. And the God of peace will be with you. Oh, that's just a little epitaph. That's a little sign off. That's just a little sign off. No, it's not. What's a Christian to do? What if you need the to-do list? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to remember these 3 things. First of all, number 1, you're an army. You're about to go out these doors. You're about to go out there. There's a war going on out there. And I want you to display, I want you to think about these character traits. I want you to love them and embrace them. Get a hold of them. I want you to take the things that you've learned, that you've seen, that you've received, and I want you to practice those things. How are you going to do it? Number 1, remember these things. The character of God. Remember the character of God. How are you going to do it? I'm conscious. This is not Christianese. This is not theory. I am literally going to remind myself of the character of God. Now, there's way too much for us to describe here. But we all know that wonderful verse. He's the what? He's the what, and he's the what, and he's the what? He's the same when? He's the same yesterday. He's the same today. He's the same forever. Speaking of the rock, I like what he's saying here. It's the God. There's a definite article in front of the God there, not just any God. It's the God. I like what I read in Matthew chapter 28 in the Great Commission when I think about going out there. What does he say at the end of that? He says what? He says, I am with you. I don't think that there's any mistake there. I think it's the I am, the character of God, the all-eternal one, the divine name of God. I am with you even to the end of the age. Remember the character of God. Number 2. What am I going to remember? Remember these 3 things: the character of God. Remember his promises. Remember his promises. I literally woke up in the middle of the night. I said, wow, there it is. There it is. The God of peace will be with you. There's a promise right there. When you're going to war, I want you to remember the character of the one who has called you, the character of the one who is leading you, and I want you to remember his promise that he will always be with you. That's a great thing to go with into battle. That's a great thing to go with. The psalmist writes in Psalm 119, I actually think it's Ezra, but you could disagree and be wrong if you'd like to. This is my comfort in my affliction. I'll say that again. Psalm 119, verse 50. Psalm 119, verse 50. This is my comfort in my affliction, that your promise gives me life. Good. Sometimes you just need to stop. This is my comfort in my affliction, that your promise gives me life. Wow. Remember his promises. And once again, what we really need to do, we just need to go back to chapter 1, verse 1. Read it again and lay hold of those things that I've already enumerated and more. I didn't get them all. Number 3, what I want you to remember: whose you are. Remember the character of the one leading you, called you, leading you. Remember his promises, and then remember whose you are. To whom do you belong? To whom do you belong when he says the God of peace will be with you? You Philippians, you brothers and sisters, you, finally my brothers. He's talking about the brothers and sisters in Christ. You belong to him. It's kind of John over there in John chapter 10, and Jesus saying to them, my sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me. We are connected. In John 17, praying to the Father, Father, make them one like we are one. We're together. They would belong to him. Think about the things that you really would want to take into battle. Maybe you're sitting there saying, wow, he's just really going on about things I've always known before. But he's saying, finally, brothers, I've got some things that I really these things I want to leave with you. I'm not forgetting what I told you all back in these pages, but there's some things I want to leave with you. You're going out there. There's a war going on. And one thing I want you to do is I want you to remember the character of Christ in you. Things like truth, honor, justice. Things that are commendable, that people, lovely, that people would come. You know, maybe you, like me, are seeing what's going on in our world, particularly in our country. And you're just, oh my goodness. Forget who's going to be president. You people are ruining what it means to be an American. You people are distorting everything good that we have attributed to what it means to be a citizen in the United States of America. I'm ashamed at you. Forget who's going to be president. Now I've gone political on you. No, I haven't. Now you stop just for a second and make sure you get this, because you, if you claim Jesus Christ, are a citizen of heaven. And for us to engage in similar activity that we are seeing on the television, newspapers, and in the airwaves is just as destructive to the gospel as it is to the country. And so, if you're looking at that, just get up at the next commercial and go into the bathroom and look in the mirror. And ask yourself about truth. Ask yourself about honorability. Ask yourself about justice. Ask yourself if I am portraying the kind of character that magnifies Jesus Christ and his gospel. Ask yourself, am I practicing the things before a fallen world to such an extent that they see something different that draws them into the gospel? And just at that time when you want to speak, when you're out there, you're in the midst of the warfare, I want you to remember those three things of application. Remember the character of your God who gave the most dear thing to him up for you. That's just a part of his character and his attributes. Remember his promises, that he'll always be with you. Remember that he'll never leave you or forsake you in the midst even of that battle. Remember, finally, that you belong to him. Then remember those promises through that book. And if perchance that it gets to the place that you suffer, then remember it's been granted to you to suffer. Gets to the place where that suffering gets to the point of death, then say, you know what? Up there is better than down here. And I gain more of Christ. Let's take it. Let's go. The world doesn't see this witness. Let's show that to them. That we have been bought with a price. That we are no longer our own, but cleansed by the blood of the Lamb, something we do not deserve, but he paid for us, and now he leads the way for us to tell others. Pray with me, would you? Lord, thank you for these final words of Paul, this exhortation. God, I pray that we would not grow weary in thinking. Then I pray that we would not grow weary in doing. I pray that you would show your character to us each and every day throughout the day, that we would be reminded of your promises and lay hold of them, that we would be reminded that we belong to you. With that kind of weaponry, with that kind of warfare, we can indeed take captive every stronghold. In Jesus I pray. Amen.